Camellia sinensis, the botanical name for a leafy tree that has captured the imagination and also fostered and confirmed the aspirations of millions of people over the centuries. This is tea. It is reputed that the Chinese are the first to have encountered this fortunate confluence of leaf with freshly boiled water, an infusion yielding a slightly astringent brew that has everything to do with well-being, positive humor, courtly conduct, and mannerly ceremonials. It is consumed daily as a beverage that stimulates the mind and relaxes the body. It is very much a fact of history that the British in the Victorian era had everything to do with the stature of this relatively humble herb assuming the position tea enjoys in the modern day. An accepted drink conveniently accessed the world over and chosen by many as a wonderful means to facilitate social intercourse or as a break from the routine, be it at home or in the workplace. Victoria Regina herself endorsed it at the St. Louis World Fair, and Prime Minister Gladstone raved over its ability to perform impressively within the human organism. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle opined seriously regarding the virtues of the enterprise and recognized Ceylon for what it did. Ceylon was where the British discovered the ideal complement in climate and terrain to be able to fully exploit the inherent nature and variety in the plant, and then extract from it a range of flavor that panders to any sybaritic sensibility. This fortuitous occurrence may well have been otherwise if the enterprising British planter had succeeded with coffee as they had planned. In the earlier years of the 19th century, the British plantation industry fairly burgeoned in Asia, moving well beyond the custom of trading in spices to acquiring a monopoly in new crops and cultivations that extended well beyond the indigenous traditions. Thus was the empire built. Ceylon, as Sri Lanka was then known, and especially its central hill country, was rapidly altered in its state and form, and the country was awash in coffee plantations. Where the local population was insufficient or uncooperative, the colonial government was able to secure indented labor from overseas, and therefore literally thousands of men and women from the arid regions of South India were cajoled by artifice and contrivance and transported lock, stock and barrel to work in clearing the jungles in Ceylon's well-forested hills, and then planting the cash crop that would enrich imperial commerce, the traders, and their market. Then suddenly, in the middle of this economic upsurge and runaway profits, a disease, the so-called coffee rust, blighted the entire enterprise, bringing hundreds of intrepid planters and their principals to bankruptcy and the occasional suicide. Hands were wrung in despair, and thousands of acres were set aflame to still the biological storm. But in the end, the coffee boom was as good as dead. In 1867, one Scotsman, James Taylor by name, still had some resolve and stamina that would enable him to tide over this burden of misfortune. Within the Kandy district, in the temperate elevation of this locale known as Galaha, and in the premises of his devastated coffee plantation, the rarefied air and the cool, salubrious environs of Lulakondara estate prompted Taylor to experiment with another type of plant to see what he could see and do. Thus began the story of Ceylon tea. Having procured some tea plants from the Peradeniya Botanical Gardens, which had originated from the hill country of India, Taylor tried to grow these in Lulakondara. They throve just as they had in Assam. But the challenge lay not in planting or growing, but in discovering a way that would make it possible for the harvested leaf crop to retain its freshness and flavor over the time required to allow consumers in faraway Britain to enjoy their cup. The Chinese tradition was to harvest the leaf and process it immediately before serving, but for British consumers, it would need to be kept for a longer while and prevented from spoilage and staleness. In this context, the ingenuity and courage of James Taylor is the more remarkable. By sheer dint of good fortune and determination, a solution was arrived at, and Taylor became the true pioneer of Ceylon tea, setting the bedrock for millions to be made by subsequent generations of planters, traders, marketers and packers, be they British or Sri Lankan. Brands were built and fortunes were secured, and the stock market flourished even as it has until this present day by virtue of these strange and handsome events of the 19th century. And above all, Ceylon was placed prominently on the world map. As it turned out, Ceylon tea became the most renowned and versatile in terms of nature, nurture, as well as for a distinctive product from varied elevations where tea is cultivated in this veritable tropical paradise. Ceylon tea set the benchmark. It still does.